Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue. In this video, I wanted to do something fun, so I made an animated pin board out of this GIF of Space Invaders. So yeah, I actually played this. I'm old enough to have played this when this was out in the arcade. So you just grab this from Google. Just Google like Space Invaders or Pac-Man or some old video game GIF, and go into After Effects. And I just threw it in here and created an image sequence. So just a sequence of pings that I could load into MODO. Here it is rendered out. So this is the pin board rendered out. Let me just play it. It's sort of a camera pull out, and you can see that yeah. So the whole animated sequence plays out on the pin board. And here's just a 4K render if you want to look at it close up. So you can see if I just kind of zoom in here, all these little capsule shapes are going to be moved up on the Y if it's white, and stay at 0 if it's black, and it's sort of colored on its distance from 0. And so it's colored white basically on its distance from 0. I'll show you how to do all of that. And it's a slightly different technique than William used in his videos he's been doing recently. We're going to use particle generators and particle mods for this. All right, here we are in MODO. Here's our Space Invaders texture. It is 47 frames, and it is a whopping 498 by 403 resolution. So we're actually going to use those numbers in our particle generator. So let's add a particle generator item, and this will generate the array of particles. So there's our particle generator. And our mesh, I've just select the empty mesh that comes with the new MODO scene, or just press N for a new empty mesh button over here, or for new empty mesh item. And holding control, I'm going to click on the capsule to create a new unit capsule in my empty mesh. I'll just go ahead and call that capsule. Boom. I'm going to add a replicator to the scene. Now think about the particle generator. It generates an array of particles, right? So we have an array, or a radial array, or a linear array, or even a user array, which is pretty cool. The one downside of this, if I just hide my capsule here, is you'll see there's no particles being drawn in the scene, right? So this node or this item, for whatever reason, it creates particles, and they're there definitely in the scene. There's 4 in each axis, but it doesn't show them in the viewport. So you're doing nothing wrong if you can't see them. It is just a really bizarre oversight on that node by whoever programmed it. So never fear, we'll hook it up to the replicator and we'll be able to see everything. So capsule goes into the prototype, and particle generator goes in the particle source. We can hide our capsule up here if it isn't already hidden. And you'll see there we've got 4 by 4 by 4 on the count, and we'll turn our Y count to 1, so it's just 4 by 4 now. And our length, we'll put the Y to 0, and that'll center it on our grid there in the middle of the world. And now we need to bump these up all the way to 498 by 403. And so that's going to create a giant solid mass of capsules there. It's probably going to slow your computer down a lot, especially if you have wireframe on. Here I just turn on wireframe so you can see. You'll lose quite a few FPS with wireframe on with this much mesh geometry. So you can do a couple things. You can turn off wireframe to speed it up a little bit. You can even go up here to this little icon and turn off basically replicators in the viewport, and it just shows bounding boxes, but there's so many packed in here, it just looks like a solid cube. I have a pretty fast computer, so I'll just turn them back on. And what I need to do is make this array bigger because we have so many of these. So let's make the array the same size divided by 10. So 49.8 and then 40.3. And so that's pretty good. Now our little capsules are spread out, but they're still packed fairly close together. One thing we can do is I can just grab the capsule here, and grab the replicator, and you click this little button called Use Prototype Transform, turn that on, select the capsule, and what that'll do is normally prototype or replicators will ignore all the transforms, the scale, the rotation, and position of a prototype, but if with that little checkbox clicked, it'll actually read those values into the replicator. So I can just press R for scale, and I'm going to scale down my prototype here. I'm just zooming in so I can get a good close look at these guys. So I'm just going to scale it down until I get some separation between each one. These are sort of our virtual pixels, right? So I want them pretty close together. I'm just looking at it from the top. I want them pretty close, but not quite intersecting. So something like so. Looks good. All right. And so there's our Atari 2600 TV screen, essentially. Now what we need to do is move some of these capsules up depending on the image, right? So if there's a Space Invader on that pixel, I want it moved up a little bit. And if it's just black, we'll just keep it where it is. We're going to do that with a particle modifier and a image fall off, or a texture fall off. So let's do a particle modifier. wherever that is, particle modifier, and drag that down to our schematic. And we're going to put that between the particle generator and the particle or the replicator. So we're going to plug it in like that. And now all these particles being fed to the particle modifier can be modified before going to the replicator. So we can make them bigger, or smaller. So if I say like 1%, I just make them really tiny like that. I can go back to 100%. I can make them move up on Y. So let's do up 0.1 and hit enter. And now you'll see them just bump up a little bit. So let's actually try maybe 0.2 like that. And so we'll have it going up 0.2, but we don't want all of them to go up 0.2. We only want them to go up 0.2 where there's a Space Invader, right? So we're going to add a texture fall off. Whoops, I saw it right there, texture fall off. And we're going to use our image sequence on this. So I need an image texture. So type in image, and we've got my image map, and that's going to be plugged in to the texture fall off texture port there with the purple graph connector. And go ahead and double click to expand the texture locator, because we're actually going to adjust this a little bit. We want it to do a planar projection on Y. So we're just projecting those Space Invaders down on Y. And we want to make sure our dimensions are the same as our particle generator. So if you remember, our particle generator is 49.8 by 40.3. We want the same dimensions on our texture locator. So 40.3. If you want to see your texture locator, just click it on here in the viewport. And then you'll also want to press O and show it, or actually Control 1. Actually, let's close that and hit Control 1 and toggle texture locators. And there you should see it. In fact, if I maybe hide my replicator, you'll see the texture locator. Will you? Will you see the texture locator? Oh, there it is, right there. So there's the texture locator. And it's the same size as our replicator, or our particle array, which is exactly what we want. And now I just need to drag my Space Invaders images down here, my image sequence, and plug that into the image slot right there. And now you can see these starting to appear there, right? There they are, sort of raising up. I just need to go to my particle modifier and make it a little bit, more profound, maybe a 0.4 or so. So those guys are pushing up a little bit like that. Maybe we'll even go 0.5 or 0.6. Yeah, that's pretty good. So they're pushed up a little bit, and we'll also make them just a little bit bigger. So maybe 120%, or maybe even more than that, maybe 140%. So now all those particles that reside within the white part of this image are going 100% on the particle modifier, and everything in black, because of the texture fall off, are going at 0% on this particle modifier. So we're only affecting where the Space Invaders are. We've made them a little fatter, and we've made them a little taller. So you'll also notice that, at least from where I'm at, everything is sort of inverted or reversed. So we can just grab our texture locator. I'm actually, I think I'm just going to rotate this guy 180 on Y. See if that does it. There we go. Flipped it back around. So we got our score up top. I think that looks correct. Actually, I think it's still inverted. So we can go to scale. We'll just do negative on that scale. Whoops. Negative 49.8, and that should get our image right. There we go. Okay. 1955, 000, and blasting away. So we've got this set up. Now we just have to do the shading. So I'm going to select my replicator, right click, say shade, create item mask. And here we are in shading. I've got an item mask on my replicator now. So any materials inside that item mask will be applied to the replicator. And you want to make sure it's on the replicator and not on the prototype, because we want to do it on this whole item here and not just the one prototype that's going to be replicated everywhere. And so I want to add a gradient. So under processing, we're going to do gradient. And under the gradient input, we're going to do surface parameters, or let's see, it is under sample parameters actually, Y distance to locator. If you're wondering what locator it's talking about the texture gradients texture locator, right? So the gradients texture locator, which is at 0. And so we just want to get things that are a little bit farther from 0, the particles that are a little farther from 0, to pick up that color. So let's open up the gradient, if I can figure out how to do that. Gradient. So middle click at 1. We're going to make that white, and then at 0, we'll make that black. And I'm going to sort of squish these together here. And what we should see here is we're going to start seeing some things are going to be white and some things are going to be black. So let's just sort of play with these here. And zoom in real close. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I need to scooch maybe the white a little closer to the black. And then move both these keys over. I think what was it, 0.2? I think what it was. So right around 0.2 is I want to center it on. Yeah, so everything above 0.2 is going to be white, and everything below is going to be black. Now, because it's an image sequence, if I change frames to like frame 15, everything will update over here, and it should update over here in the renderer, and you can see now it's firing. So you can just set up your camera however you want and scrub through and render your little vintage video game animation, no problem. Let me show you how to set up this in Octane really quick if you like to use Octane like me. So here we are in Octane. You can see I've got the same effect going on. And it's basically the same thing as MODO. I just turn this to a schematic and bring in my Octane override here. One thing is Octane doesn't like item masks on replicators, and so just move it outside the mask and the shader tree there. And we've got a gradient just like we had in MODO right there, just like this. And we've got it around 0.2, just like in MODO. The difference is we've got an Octane relative distance that's found over here. Octane relative distance right there. We've got this node in here. We have it set to a y-axis offset. You want full transform and normalize result both clicked there. And I've got 0.1 in the normalization range. And yeah, that's it. And we've got it. So again, if you change this, we'll say put that to 0, you'll see this changing to white. We'll go to like 0.1. And we're getting the black there. So pretty much the same thing. We're just rendering it in Octane, which for me always renders faster because I put my money towards GPUs, not CPUs. So yeah, grab a GIF off of Google and do a cool little retro video game animation pinboard in MODO.
Yum, yum!